Every single day, she gave him food. Not because she had extra, not because anyone was watching, but because she knew what hunger felt like. He was a crippled beggar on a cold street corner. Dirty clothes, broken leg, ignored by the world. She was a poor girl who sometimes went to bed with nothing but water and tears. What she didn't know was that the man she fed every day, the man she chose over herself, was secretly the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the country. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just change her life. It shattered hearts, rewrote destinies, and proved that kindness is never wasted. Before this story breaks you, please subscribe to this channel for more powerful, life-changing stories like this. Like this video to help this message reach more hearts. And comment below, do you believe true kindness still exists in this world? Now, let me tell you the story of the girl who fed a beggar and unknowingly fed her own miracle. The city never slept. It breathed noise. Car horns screamed without apology. Music spilled from tinted cars. Glass buildings rose into the sky like they owned the sun. Inside those towers, people laughed over expensive meals, signed deals worth millions, and complained about things that did not matter. On the streets below, life was different. Luxury cars rolled past broken pavements. High heels clicked beside barefoot children. Perfume floated through the air, mixing with dust and sweat. The city was rich, so rich it forgot how to look down. "Move, move," a man shouted as he brushed past an old woman sitting on the curb. "I'm late," another said, stepping over a sleeping beggar like he was trash. No one stopped. No one asked. No one cared. At the corner of one of the busiest streets sat people the city had decided not to see. Men with hollow eyes. Women holding babies too tired to cry. Bodies that once worked, once dreamed, now folded into themselves like they were ashamed to exist. A man leaned against a wall nearby, shaking his head. "If they worked harder, they wouldn't be here," he muttered. His friend laughed. "This city rewards effort. Weak people fall." They walked away. Above them, a billboard flashed, "Live your best life." Below it, a beggar coughed until his chest burned. Kindness did not live in billboards. It did not trend. It had no audience. If you were kind in this city, no one clapped. No camera followed you. No voice said, "You're a good person." Kindness here happened quietly, or not at all. A security guard stood near a luxury restaurant, arms crossed, watching the street with annoyance. "Don't let them come close," he warned his colleague. "They scare customers." Across from him, a young woman struggled under the weight of a small plastic bag. Her shoes were worn thin, her dress faded from too many washes. Sweat ran down her neck, but she didn't slow down. "City people don't have hearts," a street vendor said to her as she passed. She forced a small smile. "Maybe they do. Maybe they're just tired." The vendor laughed bitterly. "Hope will finish you in this place." She said nothing and kept walking. Around her, the city continued its dance. Wealth brushing shoulders with poverty, pretending it didn't feel the touch. The rich hurried past the broken. The powerful ignored the weak. And the forgotten stayed where they were, waiting for a kindness that rarely came. Because in this city, kindness had no reward, no witnesses, no guarantee. Only those who gave it knew the cost. On the corners of the busy streets, the forgotten people gathered like shadows the city had refused to see. Some sat on torn mats, their eyes empty but alert. Others leaned against walls, legs twisted from years of walking on cracked pavements. Babies clutched tired mothers, their soft cries drowned by the roar of cars and music. The smell of smoke and sweat mixed with the sweet perfume drifting from the luxury shops above, a cruel reminder of what the city had chosen to forget. Amina Sule walked past them quietly, her small feet making soft sounds on the uneven pavement. Her dress was faded, her shoes thin, but her shoulders were straight. She carried a small plastic bag of food, warm and fragrant, holding it close to her chest like it was more precious than gold. "Good morning, Amina," called Baba Musa, the old street vendor who had watched over this corner for decades. He sat on a low crate, hawking half-rotten fruit to whoever had spare change. His eyes were tired but sharp, and he always had a warning ready. "Good morning, Baba Musa," Amina replied softly. She didn't stop. She had to reach him, the man everyone called the crippled beggar. Baba Musa shook his head. "Amina, this city will swallow your hope if you're not careful. People don't see you, girl. They don't see anyone who looks like us." "I know," Amina whispered, clutching the bag tighter. But I have to do it. Someone has to. Someone has to. Or nothing will change, Baba Musa said, his voice heavy. But remember, kindness, it has no audience here. No one will cheer you. No one will notice. Sometimes, the only reward you get is more exhaustion, more hunger, more pain. Amina paused for a moment, looking down at the cracked pavement. She thought of her mother lying sick at home, of Hassan waiting for her return, of the small meal she had skipped just to afford this one. Her hands shook slightly, but she straightened her shoulders again. I don't care, she said, almost to herself. Even if no one sees, even if no one cares, it's the right thing to do. Baba Musa sighed, a sound that carried the weight of decades. Girl, you are brave. Or maybe foolish. The city will chew you up and spit you out, and it won't matter. Remember that. Amina nodded but didn't reply. She moved forward, weaving between people who ignored her, stepped over puddles mixed with oil, and skirted around the old, bent bodies of the city's forgotten. The city roared on, blind and loud, indifferent to the life on its streets. Cars honked. Music blared from passing SUVs. People in business suits brushed past her without a glance, their eyes glued to screens, their minds wrapped in deals and ambitions. And yet, she kept walking. Because in a city where wealth and power screamed, where people forgot the meaning of a helping hand, she carried her small light of kindness quietly. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. Kindness had no audience here. And maybe that made it even more important. From that day on, feeding Gabriel became Amina's quiet promise. Every morning, she woke before the sun, brushing her hair roughly, tying it back with a piece of string. She had little for herself, sometimes only a dry piece of bread or a warm cup of tea, but she would take the small meals she could afford and carry them to the street corner where Gabriel waited. Mama, I'm going to the market, she would say softly, adjusting the thin scarf over her shoulders. Mama Zainab, lying on the thin mattress, would nod weakly. All right, my child. Don't tire yourself too much. Amina smiled, hiding the ache in her stomach. I won't, Mama. But she did tire herself. She walked past people who ignored her, past the rich who rushed to their towers, and past the faces that had forgotten how to see. When she reached Gabriel's spot, she would kneel beside him, unwrap the food, and place it gently before him. Here, she said, voice soft. Eat before it gets cold. Gabriel looked at her, hesitating. You again, he whispered, shaking his head. You have nothing for yourself. What? Amina forced a small smile. I'll manage, she said. She did manage, though just barely. She would skip her breakfast. Sometimes she would skip lunch. And at night, when Mama Zainab asked if she had eaten, Amina would nod and say, Yes, Mama, I ate. Hassan, her younger brother, had begun to notice. One evening, he peeked into the kitchen as she washed a single plate. Amina, you didn't eat again, did you? He asked quietly, his young voice tinged with worry. Amina paused, her hands in soapy water. She looked at him, the corners of her eyes wet from holding back tears. I ate enough, she said softly. Don't worry, Hassan. I'm fine. But you're always giving your food to that man, he said, a hint of frustration and concern in his voice. Mama will know one day. You'll get sick. You're too small to do this alone. Amina turned toward him, kneeling on the floor to be at his level. Hassan, sometimes the right thing is hard. Sometimes it hurts. But it's worth it. Hassan's eyes filled with tears. But why him? Why not someone else? Amina smiled faintly, brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. Because he's hungry. Because he's tired. And because someone has to care. If I don't, who will? And then she left him there, torn between worry and admiration, and stepped into the busy streets. Every day was the same. She carried the food, watched Gabriel eat, and sometimes shared small conversations. Did you sleep well last night? She asked once. Gabriel shook his head. Not really, my leg hurts. Amina frowned. You should try to rest. Don't move too much. I have to survive, he murmured. Her chest tightened. She remembered the ache of hunger she had ignored that morning. She bit her lip, forcing herself to smile. Then eat well today. It will help. People passed by without notice. Some sneered. Others ignored her completely. But Amina never faltered. She had learned something in these quiet moments. Kindness doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. And yet, sometimes, when she returned home, she would collapse beside Mama Zainab and Hassan, pretending she was tired from work, pretending her stomach didn't gnaw at her bones, pretending the city hadn't tried to steal all her hope. Hassan often watched her silently, guilt and awe in his young eyes. One night, as Amina fell asleep on the floor, he whispered softly to Mama Zainab, "Mama, she's amazing, isn't she?" Mama Zainab reached out, stroking Hassan's hair gently. "Yes, my son, she is, because she sees what most people don't, and she carries it in her heart." And that heart, fragile and tired, kept walking each morning to the corner where Gabriel waited, feeding him, lifting him, and showing the quiet, uncelebrated power of a life lived in kindness. Gabriel had watched her for days before he spoke. At first, he thought it was her hunger that drew her here. She was thin, weary, moving through the crowded streets with a careful determination that seemed almost fragile. But as he watched her kneel before him, unwrap the small, meager meals she carried, and smile softly while ignoring the sneers and laughter of passers-by, he began to see something else. Something far rarer than hunger, kindness without audience. From his place against the wall, Gabriel observed how she always looked around first, careful not to be seen by people who might scold her, careful not to draw attention. He noticed how she skipped meals, how her hands shook slightly as she offered him the food, how her eyes sometimes glazed with fatigue, but never with regret. One afternoon, as she handed him a wrapped sandwich, he broke his silence. "Amina, tell me," he said, his voice weak but steady. "What do you want from life? What is your dream?" Amina froze for a moment. The question seemed almost too big for her world, too bright for the shadows she lived in. She looked down at the sandwich, her hands gripping it tightly. I just want Mama and Hassan to be safe," she whispered. "I want them to have a roof, a meal, maybe some peace. That's all I want." Gabriel studied her face carefully. There was no pretension, no lies, no selfishness. There was a raw honesty in her words, something that cut through the years of bitterness he had wrapped around himself. "And yourself?" he pressed gently. "Do you have a dream for yourself?" Amina shook her head. I don't deserve much," she said softly. "I just want to do what I can for the people I love. That's all." Gabriel's chest tightened. Her words, simple as they were, had a weight that the city around them could never bear. He had seen powerful people lie, cheat, and smile while destroying others. But here was a girl, poor and hungry, speaking truth in a world that had forgotten it. He reached into the pocket of his worn coat, his fingers brushing the smooth glass of his hidden phone. No one knew he had it. No one knew he recorded these moments. Her small gestures, her quiet courage, the way she refused to look away when the city mocked her. He wanted proof. Proof that a heart like hers could exist in a world so cruel. "You are different," he murmured finally, watching her pack up the leftover food she never ate herself. Amina looked at him with a faint smile, unaware of the weight of his words. "Different? I don't feel different. I feel tired, hungry, poor." "You are more than that," he said, almost to himself. "More than this city, more than its cruelty. I see it. I see everything you do." She laughed softly, a sound fragile but pure. "You see me because you have nothing else to do." Gabriel smiled faintly, though it did not reach his eyes. "No, I see you because no one else does. And maybe because it matters. I've watched people like you vanish into this city every day, their kindness wasted, their hearts broken, their names forgotten. You are not like them." Amina tilted her head, studying him, but she did not ask why he watched her. She did not pry. She trusted instinctively that some things were not meant to be questioned. And so the days passed. She came. She gave. She smiled. And he watched. He noticed the small things. How her fingers trembled when she tied her scarf. How she bit her lip when she felt guilty for skipping a meal. How her eyes softened when she looked at her brother and mother. Every gesture, every word, every silent moment was recorded in his hidden phone. He did not plan to use it for anything yet. He only wanted to remember, to remind himself that this kind of truth could still exist. And slowly, quietly, Gabriel realized something he had not felt in a long time. He realized that her honesty, her selflessness, her small acts of courage were beginning to heal parts of him he thought were dead. "I don't deserve this," he whispered one evening, watching her leave after handing him a warm meal. "You don't see it, Gabriel," she said softly, almost without thinking, as if answering a question he had not asked aloud. "We all deserve kindness. Even you." Her words lingered as he watched her walk away, the city swallowing her small figure into its roar. For the first time in decades, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had found someone worth watching, someone worth giving the world's smallest miracle. And with that thought, he touched the smooth glass of his hidden phone again, smiling faintly. Knowing he was keeping more than just records, he was keeping hope. It was just past noon, and the sun blazed down on the street, turning the pavement hot under Amina's thin shoes. The air smelled of fried food and exhaust, mingling with the faint perfume drifting from Mr. Okery's expensive restaurant. Gabriel sat against the wall, his leg propped awkwardly, waiting quietly as always. Amina knelt beside him, unwrapping a small meal she had saved for the day. "Here," she said softly, placing the food before him. "Eat while it's warm." Gabriel's hands shook as he reached for the meal. "You shouldn't keep doing this," he whispered. "You have so little yourself." Amina gave a small smile. "I have enough to give today. That's all I need." But their quiet moment did not last long. From the entrance of the restaurant, a tall man with a scowl and a shiny uniform approached. It was Tund, the security guard. He motioned toward Gabriel with a pointed finger. "Hey, get out of here," Tund barked. "You don't belong here." Gabriel flinched, lowering his eyes. I'm just resting," he said, his voice weak. Tund leaned closer. "No loitering. Move." Before Gabriel could answer, the restaurant owner, Mr. Okery, stepped out. His expensive shoes clicked on the pavement as he waved his arms, anger radiating from him. "What's this? Are you trying to scare my customers away?" Okery demanded, his voice harsh, carrying over the street. "Get up, old man. Move now." Gabriel tried to rise, but grimaced, pain shooting through his leg. He sank back down, wincing. Amina's heart clenched. She stood quickly, stepping between Gabriel and the two men. "Stop," she said firmly, her voice shaking but strong. "He's not hurting anyone. Leave him alone." Mr. Okery's eyes widened in disbelief. "Who are you to tell me what to do, girl? Get out of here too." "I will not leave him," Amina shouted, her hands clenching into fists. "He has done nothing wrong. He deserves to sit here, to eat, to live, just like everyone else." The teenagers nearby snickered, pointing at her. "Look at her. Defending trash," one shouted. "You crazy girl." Okery spat, his face red with anger. "You think you're some hero? Go home and do your cleaning or stay out of my sight." Amina felt the heat of shame rising in her cheeks, not for herself, but for Gabriel. She knelt again beside him, placing a protective hand over his shoulder. "He's hungry," she said, her voice breaking. "He's not bothering anyone. And neither am I. Why does your heart have to be so small?" Tund shoved her gently, trying to make her stumble back. "You've caused enough trouble. Move." "No," she shouted, planting her feet firmly. "I won't. You don't understand. He's a human being." Gabriel looked up at her, his eyes wide and glistening. "Amina, I don't want you hurt because of me," he murmured. "I don't care," she said fiercely. "I care more about you than I care about being insulted in front of the whole street." Okery's face twisted in fury. "Everyone, look at this. A foolish girl defending a beggar. Disgusting." The street had begun to notice. Some people laughed. Some whispered. Others crossed the street to avoid her. Amina's chest ached from humiliation, but she refused to back down. "You can call me names. You can laugh at me," she said, her voice trembling but unwavering. "But that will never make what you are doing right. You're cruel. And one day, someone will see that." Tund growled, pulling at her arm. "That's enough. Move now, or I'll call the police." Amina looked at Gabriel one last time, kneeling beside him. "Stay here. Don't move," she whispered. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned to face the crowd, trying to hold on to her dignity despite the burning shame in her chest. Gabriel's eyes followed her, a mixture of awe and worry. "Why? Why do you do this?" he asked quietly, his voice nearly lost beneath the city's roar. "Because it's right," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even if no one sees. Even if everyone hates me. It's the right thing to do." And for a brief moment, in the middle of insults, sneers, and the bustling indifference of the city, Amina's courage shone brighter than any tower of wealth around her. The city might have mocked her. The powerful might have scolded her. But she would never stop. Because kindness, she knew, had no audience. But it was still the only thing worth giving. Amina had walked this street many times before, but that morning felt different. The sun was barely rising, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement, and the air smelled of exhaust, dust, and something faintly sweet from a bakery across the street. Near the corner of Mr. Oakery's expensive restaurant, she noticed him for the first time. He was sitting against the cold stone wall, his legs bent unnaturally, one foot dragging slightly on the ground. His clothes were torn and stained, and his hands shook as he held a small, worn cup for coins. His face was pale, lined with age and hardship, and his eyes looked right through the busy crowd as though the world had stopped noticing him years ago. A group of teenagers passed by, their designer sneakers squeaking on the pavement. "Ew, look at that old man," one boy laughed, pointing at the beggar. "Why doesn't he just get a job?" another sneered. "Gross, smells like trash," a girl added, wrinkling her nose. Gabriel's lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. His eyes lowered to the cup in front of him, waiting for coins that rarely came. Amina felt a knot tighten in her chest. She stepped closer, clutching the small bag of food she had carried from home. Her stomach grumbled faintly. She had skipped breakfast, but her hand did not waver. "Excuse me," she said softly, kneeling down beside him. Gabriel flinched at first, as if unused to gentle voices. I brought you something to eat," she continued. She opened the bag, revealing a warm meal wrapped in foil. The smell made her mouth water, but she offered it to him anyway. Gabriel looked at the food, then at her, his eyes wide, suspicious. You shouldn't," he whispered, his voice hoarse and brittle. I don't want to bother you." "You're not bothering me," Amina said firmly, her hand shaking as she placed the meal before him. "Everyone deserves to eat." The teenagers laughed again from a few steps away. "Look at her, feeding trash like it's a charity project," one shouted. Amina ignored them, her eyes locked on the man before her. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out, his fingers trembling, and took the meal. His hands were rough, scarred, and cold against hers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city roared around them, cars honking, people shouting, the clatter of heels, but it all faded in the quiet between the girl and the beggar. Finally, he looked up at her. His eyes, tired but striking, met hers. In a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Thank you for seeing me." Amina's chest tightened. She wanted to say something, anything, but words failed her. Instead, she offered a small smile and nodded. "You're welcome," she said simply. The teenagers snickered and walked away, leaving them in silence. Gabriel took a bite of the food, closing his eyes, savoring it as if it were the first warm meal he had tasted in years. Amina stayed on her knees, her own hunger forgotten, watching him. For the first time, she realized something painful. In this city, people like him, people like her, were invisible. And yet, in that small corner, she had chosen to see him. The beggar opened his eyes again, meeting hers with a faint, fragile smile. "No one has ever done this for me," he whispered. Amina shook her head, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "It's nothing," she said softly. "It's just right." And for a few quiet minutes, in the middle of the busy, indifferent city, there was a moment where kindness existed without audience, without applause, without expectation. It was just her and him and a small meal shared in silence. The night after Amina collapsed was quiet in a way that hurt. The city still made noise, but it felt far away, like it no longer belonged to her. White hospital walls surrounded her, cold and unforgiving, smelling of medicine and worry. Mama Zainab lay on the narrow bed, her chest rising and falling slowly, each breath sounding like a struggle she might lose at any moment. Amina sat beside her, fingers wrapped tightly around her mother's hand. "Mama, I'm here," she whispered. "Please don't leave me." Mama Zainab opened her eyes just a little. Her voice was weak, almost breaking apart. "My child, you look tired." Amina swallowed hard and smiled, though her eyes burned. "I'm fine, Mama. I just need a little rest." Mama Zainab tried to lift her hand, but failed. "You always say that," she murmured. "You carry too much for someone so small." Amina shook her head gently. "I'm strong enough. I promise." Outside the ward, hidden behind a pillar, Gabriel stood quietly. His clothes were still worn, his posture still bent, but his eyes were wide open, watching everything. He had followed them to the hospital, keeping his distance, afraid to be seen, afraid of what he was already feeling. He had seen suffering before. He had seen loss. But this was different. This was suffering chosen out of love. Later that night, when Mama Zainab finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, Amina stepped into the hallway. Her body ached. Her head spun. She leaned against the wall, sliding slowly down until she sat on the cold floor. Gabriel moved closer, careful, quiet. "Amina," he said softly. She looked up, surprised but not alarmed. "You came." "I had to," he replied. He hesitated, then lowered himself onto the bench across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of hospital machines filled the silence. Then Gabriel asked the question that had been burning in his chest for days. "Amina, tell me something." His voice trembled slightly. "Do you think kindness should be rewarded?" She frowned, confused. "Rewarded?" "Yes," he continued carefully. "If someone gives and suffers because of it, do you think they should be paid back? With money? With comfort? With something?" Amina stared at the floor for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but firm. "No." Gabriel's breath caught. "No." She shook her head slowly. "If kindness needs payment, then it's no longer kindness. It becomes a trade. But you are suffering," he said quietly. "You are hungry, tired. Your family is sick. Doesn't that mean something?" Amina looked up at him, her eyes tired but honest. "It means life is hard," she said. "Not that kindness is wrong." Gabriel leaned forward. "What if someone wanted to help you? Truly help you?" She gave a sad smile. "Then I would be grateful. But I didn't help you so you could help me back. I helped you because you were there. Because you were hungry. Because you're human." Her words hit him harder than any insult ever had. "You don't even know who I am," he whispered. "I don't need to," she replied gently. "I know enough." Gabriel looked away, his chest tight. He pressed his fingers into his palm, feeling the hidden phone there, heavy with secrets. For the first time since he started watching her, he felt ashamed. That night stretched longer than any other. Mama Zainab cried out in her sleep. Nurses rushed in and out. Amina stayed awake, refusing to rest, whispering prayers, begging God for mercy. Around midnight, exhaustion finally claimed her. She slid down beside the hospital bed and curled up on the cold floor, using her folded scarf as a pillow. Her body shook slightly as she slept, hunger and fear fighting even in her dreams. Gabriel stood at the doorway, watching. He watched the girl who had given away her food sleep on the floor like she deserved nothing better. He watched her flinch every time her mother coughed. He watched a kindness so pure it made his chest ache. "I have buildings," he whispered to himself. "I have money. I have power." His eyes burned. "And yet, I have never been this rich." As dawn slowly crept through the hospital window, Gabriel turned away, his decision forming like a quiet storm inside him. Because that night, the longest night, changed everything. It was the night he stopped asking whether kindness should be rewarded and started asking how to protect it. The day Amina lost her cleaning job, the city did not pause. It never did. She stood in the narrow hallway of the office building, clutching her mop handle like it was the last thing keeping her upright. The supervisor barely looked at her. "We don't need you anymore," the woman said, flipping through papers. "Budget cuts. You can go." Amina opened her mouth. "Please, I can work extra hours. I can take less pay." The woman sighed, annoyed. "I said we're done. Leave your uniform." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just like that, the little money that kept her family breathing was gone. Amina stepped outside into the heat, the noise crashing into her chest. Her legs felt weak. She pressed her palm against the wall, whispering, "It's okay. It's okay." But her voice shook. That night, Mama Zainab's breathing worsened. Each breath sounded heavier than the last, like it was being dragged out of her chest. "Amina," Mama whispered, sweat soaking her thin clothes. "My chest, it hurts." Amina knelt beside her, panic filling her eyes. "Mama, please hold on. I'll get medicine. I promise." Hassan stood at the doorway, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. "Sister, are you okay?" Amina forced a smile she didn't feel. "I'm fine," she lied again. "Everything will be okay." But everything was not okay. The next morning, Amina sold the last thing she owned of value, her old phone. The man barely gave her anything for it. She counted the money twice, her hands shaking. It wasn't enough for full treatment. It wasn't enough for food. Still, she bought a small meal. Not for herself. For Gabriel. Her stomach burned as she walked to the street corner, dizziness clouding her vision. The world felt too bright, too loud. When she reached Gabriel, he noticed immediately. "Amina, "You're shaking," he said, alarm in his voice. "Sit down." "I'm fine," she whispered, kneeling beside him. She placed the food in front of him with trembling hands. "Please eat." Gabriel frowned. "Did you eat today?" She hesitated, just for a second. Then she nodded. "Yes." He knew she was lying. He could see it in her pale face, her sunken eyes, the way her body swayed slightly. "Amina, please," he said softly. "Don't lie to me." Before she could answer, her vision darkened. The street spun. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed beside him, her body hitting the ground with a dull sound. "Amina!" Gabriel shouted. Panic ripped through his voice. "Amina, look at me." People slowed down, stared, then kept walking. No one stopped. No one helped. Gabriel's heart pounded. He planted his hands on the ground and tried to push himself up. Pain shot through his leg, sharp and burning, but he ignored it. "No, no, please," he groaned, forcing his body upward. His crutch slipped. He fell back, gasping. "Amina," he cried again, his voice breaking. She stirred faintly, her lips dry. Did you eat?" she whispered, even now. Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do you keep choosing me over yourself?" She tried to smile. "Because someone has to." With a deep, desperate breath, Gabriel tried again. His muscles screamed. Sweat poured down his face. Slowly, unnaturally, he stood, shaking violently. People stared. Someone gasped. The crippled beggar was standing. Gabriel reached her, lowering himself awkwardly, pulling her gently into his arms. "Help!" he shouted. "Please help her." Finally, someone stopped. Then another. An ambulance was called. As Amina was lifted away, her fingers brushed his hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly. "I didn't mean to worry you." Gabriel looked down at her, his heart breaking in a way money had never taught him. "No," he whispered. "I should be the one apologizing." As the sirens faded, Gabriel sank back onto the pavement, his secret heavier than ever before. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't testing humanity anymore. He was afraid of losing it. The next morning, Amina woke up with a heaviness in her chest she could not explain. Mama Zainab was sleeping, her breathing still weak but steady. Amina stood quietly, adjusted her scarf, and stepped out of the hospital with a small plastic bag in her hand. Inside the bag was food, not for herself, for Gabriel. Her body was still sore from the long night on the floor. Her head ached. Her stomach felt empty and painful, but she walked anyway, step after step, through the waking city. Cars rushed past. Shops opened. People laughed, talked, argued. Life moving on like nothing had happened. When she reached the corner near Mr. Oakrey's restaurant, she slowed down. Something was wrong. The wall where Gabriel always sat was empty. No crutch leaning against the stone. No worn mat. No familiar bent figure waiting quietly. Amina stopped walking. Her heart began to beat faster. She looked around, confused, hopeful, afraid all at once. "Gabriel," she called softly. No answer. She stepped closer, scanning the pavement like maybe he had only moved a little. Maybe he was around the corner. Maybe he was late for the first time. "Gabriel," she called again, louder now. People passed by without stopping. A man brushed her shoulder. A woman stared at her bag and walked away. The city did not notice the fear growing in her eyes. She turned to Baba Musa, who was setting up his small fruit stand nearby. "Baba Musa," she said quickly, "have you seen the old man? The crippled one who sits here?" Baba Musa looked at her, then slowly shook his head. "No, my child. I haven't seen him since yesterday." Amina swallowed hard. Maybe he moved. Baba Musa sighed. "People like him don't move, Amina. They disappear." Her hands began to shake. She knelt down anyway, right there on the pavement, like she always did. Slowly, carefully, she placed the food on the ground where Gabriel used to sit. "Maybe he'll come back," she whispered. "Maybe he's just late." Minutes passed. Nothing. The food grew cold. Amina sat back on her heels, staring at the empty space. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe properly. What if her voice broke? She couldn't finish the sentence. A thought crept into her mind, slow and cruel. What if he died? Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hand over her mouth, trying not to cry in public. She had seen death before. Too many times. People like Gabriel didn't get hospitals. They didn't get care. They didn't get second chances. They just stopped being there. "I should have stayed," she whispered to herself. "I should have checked on him last night." A passerby looked at her kneeling on the ground and laughed softly. "Who are you waiting for?" the woman asked mockingly. "A ghost." Amina didn't answer. She stayed there for a long time, longer than she should have. People came and went. The sun climbed higher. The food remained untouched. Finally, she stood up slowly, her knees weak. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said aloud, like she was making a promise to the empty wall. "I'll bring something warm." She walked away, but after a few steps, she turned back and looked at the corner one last time. "I hope you're not hungry," she whispered, "wherever you are." That night, she cried quietly on the hospital floor beside Mama Zainab's bed. Hassan held her hand, confused and worried. "Did something happen?" he asked softly. Amina nodded, tears slipping down her face. I think someone kind is gone." She didn't sleep much. The next day, she returned again. The corner was still empty. She left food again. And again the next day. Each time, hope grew smaller. Fear grew louder. Until one morning, as she knelt there with shaking hands, she whispered the words she had been avoiding. "He's dead, isn't he?" The city did not answer. The food stayed untouched. And for the first time since she met him, Amina Sule walked away from that corner feeling truly alone, believing that the man she fed, the man who thanked her for seeing him, was now just another forgotten soul swallowed by the city that never cared. 3 days after Gabriel disappeared, a strange envelope arrived at the hospital. Amina was sitting beside Mama Zainab's bed, gently wiping her mother's forehead with a damp cloth, when a nurse stopped in front of her. "Are you Amina Sule?" the nurse asked. Amina looked up, startled. "Yes, I am. There's a letter for you." Amina wiped her hands on her dress before taking it. The envelope was thick, clean, cream-colored. Her name was written neatly across the front, spelled correctly, something that almost never happened. There was a logo stamped in gold at the corner. Kingsley Holdings. Her heart skipped. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. Kingsley Holdings owned half the buildings in the city. Offices, hotels, factories, power, money. The kind of company people only spoke about in whispers. "This must be a mistake," Amina murmured. Hassan leaned closer. "What does it say?" he asked. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. "You are formally invited to attend a private meeting at Kingsley Holdings headquarters. Transportation is not provided. Please arrive at 10 a.m. sharp." No explanation. No signature. Just the seal. Amina stared at the paper for a long time. "Why would they invite you?" Hassan asked, confused. "I don't know," she whispered honestly. "I've never even entered a place like that." Mama Zainab opened her eyes slightly. "Go," she said weakly. "Whatever it is, go." Amina shook her head. "Mama, I don't belong there." Mama Zainab squeezed her fingers with what little strength she had. "Sometimes, doors open even for the poor. Don't be afraid." The next morning, Amina stood in front of the tallest building she had ever seen. Glass and steel stretched into the sky, reflecting sunlight so brightly it hurt her eyes. People in fine suits moved in and out through wide doors like they owned the world. Cars worth more than her entire life pulled up smoothly and drove away again. She looked down at her dress. It was clean but old. Her shoes were worn. Her hands were rough. She swallowed hard and stepped forward. At the entrance, 2 security guards stood tall and still. One of them looked her up and down and frowned. "Yes?" he asked sharply. I have an invitation," Amina said softly, holding out the letter. He barely glanced at it before laughing. "This place is not for beggars." Her face burned. "Sir, please, my name is on it." The second guard took the letter and read it more carefully. His expression changed slightly, but suspicion remained. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It was delivered to me," Amina replied. "I didn't ask for it." The first guard scoffed. "People fake these things all the time." Amina's eyes filled with tears. "I swear, I wouldn't lie about something like this." People passing by slowed down, curious. A woman whispered to her companion. A man smirked. The familiar weight of public shame pressed down on Amina's chest. Just as she turned to leave, defeated, a woman in a sharp suit approached briskly from inside. "What's going on here?" she asked. "She claims she has an invitation," the guard said. The woman took the letter, studied it closely, then looked at Amina again, really looked at her. "This invitation is real," she said calmly. "Escort her inside." The guard stiffened immediately. "Why, yes, ma'am." Amina blinked. Inside, the woman nodded. "Please follow us." Her legs felt weak as she stepped past the doors. The cool air hit her face. The marble floors gleamed beneath her feet. Everything smelled clean, expensive, unreal. People stared as she walked through the lobby. Some curious, some judgmental, some confused. Amina kept her eyes down, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. "Am I in trouble?" she whispered to the woman escorting her. The woman glanced at her briefly. "No, just walk." They entered an elevator that moved faster than anything Amina had ever felt. Her ears popped. Her hands clenched together. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a long hallway lined with glass walls and quiet power. At the end was a large wooden door. "Wait here," the woman said gently. Amina nodded, standing alone. Her mind raced. Why was she here? What did they want from her? Had she done something wrong? She thought of Gabriel, of his empty corner, of his soft voice saying, "Thank you for seeing me." Her chest tightened. The door opened. "Please come in," a voice said. Amina took one last breath and stepped forward, unaware that the world she knew was about to change forever. The room Amina stepped into was larger than any place she had ever been. A long glass table stretched across the center, surrounded by leather chairs. Tall windows showed the city from above, small and quiet, like it finally knew how powerless it was. Men and women in expensive suits sat around the table, their faces calm, important, unreadable. Amina stood near the door, unsure where to go. A woman with silver hair and sharp eyes rose slowly from her seat. There was authority in the way she moved, the kind that did not need to shout to be obeyed. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was calm but strong. "My name is Mrs. Evelyn Hart. I am the chairwoman of Kingsley Holdings." Amina bowed her head slightly. "Good morning, ma'am." Mrs. Hart studied her for a moment. Not her clothes, not her shoes, her face, her eyes. "You may be wondering why you are here," Mrs. Hart continued, walking slowly toward the front of the room. "I assure you, you are not in trouble." Amina let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "This meeting," Mrs. Hart said, turning to the others, "is long overdue." The board members shifted in their seats. Some looked serious. Some looked uncomfortable. One or two avoided looking at Amina altogether. Mrs. Hart pressed a button on the table. The lights dimmed slightly. "Before I introduce our CEO," she said, "there is something you must all see." A large screen came to life. Amina's breath caught in her throat. The footage showed a familiar street corner. Mr. Oakrey's restaurant. The cracked pavement. The wall. And then, her. She saw herself kneeling down, offering food to a man sitting against the wall. "No," she whispered. The room was silent except for the sound of the video. There was Amina again, on another day. And another. Giving food. Speaking softly. Ignoring laughter. Standing between the beggar and the security guard. Being insulted. Being pushed. Amina covered her mouth. "I didn't know," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't know anyone was watching." Mrs. Hart spoke gently. "You weren't meant to know." The video continued. It showed Amina collapsing beside the beggar. It showed him struggling, trying to stand, shouting for help. Gasps filled the room. Some board members looked away. The screen went dark. Amina felt her legs weaken. Why are you showing this?" she asked softly, her voice shaking. Mrs. Hart turned toward the door behind her. "Because," she said, "it is time for the truth." The door opened. Footsteps echoed. A man walked in. He was tall, straight-backed, dressed in a perfectly fitted dark suit. His hair was neatly trimmed. His shoes shined under the lights. Power followed him like a shadow. Every single person in the room stood instantly. "Good morning, sir," they said in unison. Amina stared. Her heart stopped. The man's face was familiar. Too familiar. Her lips parted. No, it was Gabriel. Not bent. Not shaking. Not broken. He walked with strength. With confidence. With a calm authority that filled the room. He stopped a few steps away from her. "Amina," he said softly. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Her voice broke. "You can walk." Tears streamed down her face. You were sick. You were hungry. I thought you were dead." Gabriel's eyes shone. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you." Mrs. Hart spoke again. "Allow me to formally introduce the CEO of Kingsley Holdings, Mr. Gabriel Kingsley." The name hit her like thunder. The room blurred. You were the beggar," Amina whispered. All this time, Gabriel nodded slowly. "Yes." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. "Why?" she cried. "Why would you lie to me? Why would you sit there and let me starve while you had everything? The room held its breath. Gabriel stepped closer, his voice thick with emotion. Because I lost faith, he said. I lost faith in people, in kindness, in truth. I needed to know if it still existed without cameras, without reward. He swallowed hard. And then I met you. Amina shook her head, tears falling freely. I didn't do it for money. I didn't do it to be tested. I know, he said quickly. That is why it matters. He turned to the room. This young woman fed me every day while she herself was hungry. She defended me while being insulted. She slept on a hospital floor while worrying more about me than herself. His voice cracked. She saw me when I made myself invisible. Silence filled the room. Gabriel looked back at Amina, eyes wet. When you thought I was dead, I watched you leave food anyway. Amina gasped. You saw that? Yes, he whispered. And that was when I knew. I could never remain silent again. He bowed his head slightly. Forgive me, Amina, for deceiving you, for testing you, for letting you suffer. Amina wiped her tears with trembling hands. I didn't need a test, she said softly. I just needed you to eat. Her words broke something in him. Mrs. Hart cleared her throat gently. Amina Sule, she said, this company has wealth. But today, it stands humbled before you. The room remained silent. Because in that moment, the poorest girl in the room carried the richest heart anyone had ever seen. The room was still. No one moved. No one spoke. The air felt heavy, like it could break if someone breathed too loudly. Amina stood in the middle of it all, her hands shaking, her eyes swollen from tears. The truth had fallen on her like a storm, and she was still trying to stand. Gabriel turned slowly to the people seated around the long table. This meeting, he said, his voice calm but heavy with emotion, is not about profit. It is not about growth or numbers. It is about conscience. Some of the board members shifted uncomfortably. He faced Amina again. Amina Sule, he said gently. You asked me once if kindness should be rewarded. She nodded slowly. Yes. I asked because I wanted to know who you were, he continued. Not what you needed. Not what you wanted. But who you were when no one was watching. Amina swallowed hard. I didn't know I was being watched. I know, Gabriel said. That is why this matters. He turned back to the room and raised his hand slightly. I am announcing today that Amina Sule will receive a gift of $200,000. A gasp rippled through the room. $200,000. The number echoed in Amina's mind like something unreal, something meant for other people. Her heart pounded. Her legs felt weak. No, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. No, Gabriel repeated softly. She shook her head, stepping back. I can't take that. I didn't feed you for money. I didn't help you because I thought something would come back to me. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were firm. If I take that money, it will feel like everything I did was a lie. The room fell silent again. Gabriel looked at her, his expression gentle but unwavering. This is not payment, he said carefully. I would never insult your heart like that. Then what is it? She asked, tears sliding down her cheeks. He stepped closer. It is responsibility. She looked confused. Responsibility? Yes, he said. Responsibility to live without fear. Responsibility to care for your family. Responsibility to continue being who you are without starving for it. Amina's voice broke. But there are others like me. Others who are hungry. Others who give and never receive anything back. And that, Gabriel said softly, is exactly why you must accept this. She shook her head again. I don't want to change. I don't want to become like them. She gestured toward the glass windows, toward the city. I don't want money to make me forget. Gabriel's eyes glistened. Then don't forget, he whispered. Use it to remember. He turned to the board. This money is not meant to lift her above others. It is meant to place her where she can lift others too. Amina's hands trembled. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. Afraid that if I take it, I'll lose myself. Gabriel reached out, stopping just short of touching her. You already proved you won't, he said. A person who feeds a stranger while starving does not forget who she is. Silence wrapped around them. Finally, Amina spoke again, her voice small but steady. If I accept, she said slowly, it won't be for me alone. Gabriel nodded immediately. Of course. It will be to help my mother, she continued. To send my brother to school. And to feed people like you, like the man you pretended to be. A tear slid down Gabriel's face. That, he said, is exactly why this money belongs to you. Amina closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. She nodded once. Then I accept, she whispered. Not as a reward, but as a chance. The room exhaled. And for the first time since she walked into that building, Amina Sule felt something she had never known before. Relief. Not the relief of wealth, but the relief of knowing that kindness, real kindness, had not been punished after all. Amina did not celebrate. There was no scream of joy, no sudden laughter, no dancing in the large office that still smelled of polish and power. She stood quietly, the weight of the decision resting on her chest like a child asleep on her heart. She lifted her eyes to Gabriel. "There is something I need to say," she said softly. Gabriel nodded. "Speak." She took a small step forward. "I will not keep this money for myself alone." The room went still again. "I was hungry when I fed you," she continued. "There are people who are still hungry now. If this money only changes my life, then it means nothing." Gabriel's lips curved into a gentle smile, not of pride, but of respect. "What do you want to do, Amina?" "I wanted to help others," she said, her voice growing steadier. "The forgotten ones. The people on the corners. The ones no one looks at." Mrs. Evelyn Hart leaned forward. "Are you saying you want to give it away?" Amina nodded. "Not give it away, build something with it." Gabriel's eyes softened. "Tell us." She swallowed. "A place where people can eat without begging. Where sick mothers can see a doctor. Where children can return to school without shame." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't want anyone to kneel the way I did, unless it is to help someone else." Gabriel stood up fully now. "Then we will do it properly." He turned to Mrs. Hart. "Begin the paperwork." "Today." Mrs. Hart smiled for the first time. "It shall be done." "And the name?" Gabriel asked, turning back to Amina. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't need my name on it." Gabriel shook his head gently. "You already gave your name when you gave your heart." He said it clearly, for everyone to hear. "The Amina Sule Foundation." Amina covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. "I never wanted my name to be known." "It won't be known for wealth," Gabriel said. "It will be known for mercy." Mama Zainab did not believe it at first. She lay on the hospital bed, thin and weak, her eyes struggling to stay open as doctors moved around her. "Amina," she whispered, "why are we here?" Amina held her hand, warm and steady. "Mama, you're going to be okay." Mama Zainab smiled faintly. "You always say that." This time, Amina whispered, "It's true." The doctors spoke gently. Treatment began. Medicine came without delay. Clean sheets replaced the old ones. Food arrived, warm and filling. Mama Zainab cried quietly. "I prayed," she said. "I prayed that God would see us." Amina kissed her hand. "He did, Mama." Hassan stood at the school gate, his backpack new but his eyes familiar. "You sure I belong here?" he asked nervously. Amina smiled. "You never stop belonging." He hugged her tightly. "I'll study hard," he promised. "So I can help people too." "That's all I ask," she replied. The streets had not changed. The corners were still crowded. The forgotten still waited. But this time, Amina did not walk alone. Volunteers stood beside her. Food vans arrived. Doctors followed. Social workers knelt where she once knelt alone. Amina bent down again, offering a plate of food to a trembling man. He looked up at her. "Why are you doing this?" She smiled softly. "Because someone once sat here and changed my life." From across the street, Gabriel watched quietly, his hands in his pockets, his heart full. She had returned to the streets, not as a savior, but as proof that kindness, even when unseen, can still change the world. Mama Zainab woke up one morning to sunlight pouring gently through a clean hospital window. For a long time, she just lay there, listening to the soft sounds of machines and distant footsteps. Her body felt lighter. The pain that used to sit on her chest like a stone was no longer shouting. It was quiet now, manageable. A nurse noticed her eyes open and smiled. "Good morning, Mama. How are you feeling today?" Mama Zainab swallowed slowly. "Alive," she whispered. "I feel alive." When Amina entered the room, Mama Zainab stared at her for a long moment, as if afraid she might disappear. "Amina," she said softly. "I'm here, Mama." Amina replied, rushing to her side. Mama Zainab touched her daughter's face, her fingers trembling. "You look rested," she said. "That scares me." Amina laughed gently through tears. "Don't be scared. I'm just not hungry anymore." Mama Zainab closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "God has remembered us." "No," Amina said quietly, holding her hand. "God used people and kindness." Hassan stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting his school uniform. It was clean, new, still stiff at the edges. "Amina," he called. "Does this look okay?" She stepped into the doorway and smiled, so wide her cheeks hurt. "You look like someone who belongs anywhere." Hassan grinned. "I was scared to go back." "I know," she said softly. "What if they ask where I've been?" he asked. "Tell them the truth," Amina replied. "That life was hard, but you came back." He nodded. Then his voice dropped. "I won't waste it." Amina hugged him tightly. "I know you won't." As he ran off toward the school gate, she watched until he disappeared, her heart full in a way it had never been before. The streets were still loud. Cars still rushed. People still looked away. But now, when Amina walked through the corners of the city, she was not alone. There were tables, warm food, clean water, doctors kneeling beside the sick, volunteers listening instead of rushing. Amina knelt again, just like before, placing food into waiting hands. A woman looked at her suspiciously. "Why are you helping us?" Amina smiled softly. "Because someone once helped me by letting me help them." The woman ate slowly, tears falling into her meal. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the city softened, Amina sat quietly on a bench. Gabriel joined her. No cameras, no board members, no distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Gabriel broke the silence. "You came back to the streets." Amina nodded. "I never left them." He smiled. "Thank you for forgiving me." She looked at him. "Thank you for listening." They sat there, watching people eat, laugh softly, rest. "I thought kindness needed power to survive," Gabriel said. "You showed me it only needs courage." Amina smiled. "And you showed me that help doesn't have to destroy dignity." They exchanged a quiet look, full of understanding. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. And in that simple sound, the world felt kinder.